He wore a faded gray t-shirt, no logos, no belt. The crowd snickered. The Jeet Kune Do champion sneered, "Look what we have here." They didn't know they were mocking a man who once guarded America's most sacred tomb. The community center gym in San Diego was a pressure cooker of noise and ambition. The humid air, thick with the scent of sweat and faint sea salt blowing in from the coast, vibrated with energy. Shouts from coaches ricocheted off cinderblock walls, the rhythmic slapping of feet on blue and red mats blending with the excited chatter of families in folding chairs. It was the annual SoCal Martial Arts Open, and for most, it was just another Saturday of controlled combat and plastic trophies. No one paid much attention to the man who walked in long after the opening announcements. At 35, he moved with a quiet economy that seemed to absorb the surrounding chaos rather than reflect it. His shoulders were square, his posture ramrod straight, a living contradiction to the relaxed, bouncing energy of the other competitors. He wore a plain, charcoal gray t-shirt, worn soft and faded from countless washes, tucked neatly into unadorned white training pants. No team logos. No flashy brand names. No belt. He approached the registration table, his face a mask of calm neutrality. He handed over his form and driver's license. The volunteer, a teenager more interested in her phone, barely glanced up. Name, Ethan Carter. Division, Adult Men's Advanced. She pointed vaguely toward a crowded warm-up area. Over there. You're up in about an hour. Ethan gave a slight nod but didn't go. Instead, he found an empty spot on a metal bench against the far wall, away from the main flow of traffic. He sat down, back perfectly erect, hands clasped loosely in his lap. His eyes scanned the room, not with the nervous energy of a fighter, but with the patient, unwavering focus of a watchman on a long post. His hair, a high-end tight fade, was ruthlessly disciplined, and as he turned his head slightly, the harsh gym lighting caught a single, thin scar that disappeared into his right eyebrow, a detail so subtle it was almost invisible. From the bleachers, David Chen, a former Marine Corps drill instructor, lowered his paper cup of coffee. He squinted, his eyes, trained to spot the slightest imperfection in a formation of recruits, locking onto Ethan. He nudged the friend beside him. "See that guy? By the wall. The one with no belt?" "Yeah. Looks like he wandered in from a yoga class." "No," David said, his voice low and certain. "Look at his posture. The way he sits. That's not a fighter's posture. That's parade rest, even when seated. I've seen that stillness before." David's mind flashed back to a trip to Washington, D.C. years ago. Arlington National Cemetery. The tomb of the unknown soldier. He remembered the relentless sun, the suffocating humidity, and the unwavering sentinel on duty. The precision of the guard's 21 steps, the perfect click of his heels, the flawless execution of the manual of arms. That guard had possessed the exact same profound stillness Ethan Carter now radiated from across a noisy gymnasium. "That man," David whispered, more to himself than his friend, "is a soldier. And a damn good one." An hour bled into the next. Matches were won and lost. Names were called over a crackling PA system, followed by bursts of applause or groans of disappointment. Through it all, Ethan remained on his bench, a statue in a sea of motion. He didn't stretch, didn't shadowbox. He simply watched. A few younger fighters pointed and snickered, whispering about the bold guy who forgot his belt. Next match, Mat 3. Ricky, the Flash, fan versus Ethan Carter. The call finally broke his stillness. Ethan stood, his movement fluid and deliberate, and walked toward the designated mat. As he passed, a few people openly gawked at his plain attire. He stepped onto the mat, bowed curtly to the referee, then to his opponent. Ricky, the Flash, fan was everything Ethan was not. He was a whirlwind of motion, his body adorned in a crisp taekwondo uniform with a black belt tied smartly around his waist. He bounced on the balls of his feet, shaking out his arms and legs, a picture of explosive, kinetic energy. He gave Ethan a dismissive smirk, his eyes lingering on the empty space around Ethan's waist. Easy win. The referee gave the signal. Begin. Ricky exploded forward. He threw a series of dazzling, high-speed kicks, a feinting axe kick into a sharp side kick, followed by a spinning hook kick aimed at head height. The crowd booed at the display. But the kicks met nothing but empty air. Ethan hadn't retreated or blocked. He had simply shifted his weight, taking one small, precise step to his left, letting the storm of attacks pass by him with inches to spare. Ricky landed, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He reset and came again, this time with a flurry of hand strikes meant to close the distance. Again, Ethan moved just enough. A slight turn of the shoulder, a subtle dip of the torso. Ricky's gloves whistled past, finding no target. The match became a bizarre dance, a frantic attacker and a placid defender who seemed to know where every strike would land before it was thrown. The whispers in the crowd changed from mockery to bewilderment. "Is he just going to dodge the whole time?" someone asked. David Chen, in the stands, leaned back with a slow, knowing smile. "He's not dodging," he murmured to his friend. "He's letting the other kid punch himself out. It's efficiency." The end came 2 minutes in. Frustrated and breathing heavily, Ricky committed to a final, powerful spinning heel kick. He put all his weight and momentum into it, a knockout blow. At the last possible second, Ethan took a single step back into the side. Ricky's kick spun through the space where Ethan's head had been, his over-rotation pulling him off balance. His feet tangled, and with a clumsy stumble, he lurched forward, one foot landing just outside the boundary of the mat. A whistle blew. The judge raised a hand. "Point and match, Carter." "Out of bounds." Ethan bowed, his expression unchanged. He had won without throwing a single punch, a single kick, a single block. He simply let his opponent defeat himself. As he walked back to his bench and resumed his silent watch, the gym buzzed with a new kind of energy, confusion, intrigue, and for a select few, a dawning sense of respect. The tournament progressed, the field of competitors narrowing. Ethan won his next 2 matches in precisely the same manner, his opponents, unnerved by his passive defense, making crucial errors. He was no longer a joke, he was an enigma, the ghost of the tournament. And then the brackets aligned for the semi-final. On mat 1, the reigning champion, Julian Jett Valdez, versus Ethan Carter. The announcement sent a ripple through the gymnasium. If Ethan was the ghost, Jett Valdez was the storm. At 28, he was a phenom, a Jeet Kune Do master who had moved from a famed LA dojo to San Diego to build his own empire. He was fast, powerful, and carried himself with the swagger of a rock star. His reputation wasn't just built on wins, it was built on a philosophy of brutal efficiency and public dominance. Jett strode toward the mat, an entourage of students trailing behind him. He wore sleek, black and yellow compression gear under his loose training pants, the logo of his academy, a stylized hornet, emblazoned on his chest. He was a marketing machine, a modern warrior who understood the power of brand. He saw Ethan waiting, standing in his quiet, unassuming way. Jett had heard the whispers about the strange man with no belt. He watched as Ethan bowed to the officials, the movement as plain and unadorned as his gray t-shirt. Jett laughed, a short, sharp sound full of arrogance. He didn't go to his starting position. Instead, he walked directly toward Ethan, circling him slowly like a shark. The crowd quieted, sensing a confrontation. Well, Jett said, his voice loud enough for the first few rows to hear clearly. "Look what we have here." He stopped in front of Ethan, looking him up and down with theatrical disdain. "I've been hearing stories about you. The man who wins without fighting. Very mysterious." Ethan remained silent, his gaze steady. Jett leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial sneer. "Someone told me you used to be a tomb guard. One of those guys who marches back and forth in a fancy suit." is that right? He gestured around the gym. This is a little different than guarding a cemetery, pal. Here, your opponent actually moves. A few of Jett's students snickered. The referee looked on nervously, unsure if he should intervene. So tell me, Jett continued, circling back in front of him. You gonna do your little magic trick where you just stand there? Or are you actually going to fight? He paused for effect, then delivered his final, cutting line. Hey, statue. You gonna move, or just stand guard? The taunt hung in the air, sharp and ugly. Ethan's expression didn't change, but David Chen saw it, a subtle tightening of the jaw, an almost imperceptible shift in his focus. The calm stillness was still there, but now, it felt different. It was no longer passive. It was charged. This had just become more than a match. The referee, eager to impose order, called them to the center. Fighters, bow. Begin. Jett didn't wait. He exploded from his stance, a textbook demonstration of Jeet Kune Do's core principle, the straight blast. His lead hand shot out, followed by a rapid-fire series of straight punches aimed directly at Ethan's centerline. It was a blitzkrieg meant to overwhelm, to shock an opponent into a defensive shell. But Ethan wasn't there. He didn't retreat. He took a small, lateral step, angling his body just so the punches slid past his shoulder like water flowing around a stone. The sound was a series of sharp hisses as Jett's gloves sliced through the air. Jett reset, a frown creasing his brow. It wasn't just a dodge, it was a void. He launched a new attack, a low side kick aimed at Ethan's knee, designed to immobilize, followed by a high hook. Ethan's lead foot drew back just inches, causing the kick to fall short, and he swayed his torso back, the hook swinging harmlessly in front of his face. He moved no more than was absolutely necessary. He was an editor, deleting himself from every frame of the attack. The crowd, which had been cheering for their champion, fell quiet. They were watching a master at work, but it was the wrong one. All the action, all the aggression, came from Jett. Yet all the control seemed to emanate from the still man in the gray shirt. That's not defense, David Chen murmured, his eyes locked on the mat. It's a conversation. Jett is shouting, and Carter is just listening. Frustration began to curdle Jett's technique. His movements became a fraction wilder, his breathing more pronounced. He fainted, trying to draw a reaction, a flinch, anything. Ethan gave him nothing. Inside Ethan's mind, the chaos of the fight was a quiet space. He saw a flash of a memory, a dusty training area in a forgotten corner of the world, and the smiling face of Leo Garcia. Don't watch the hands, Ethan, Leo's voice echoed in his memory. Watch the shoulders. Watch the hips. They tell the truth before the strike is even born. Jett let out a guttural growl and launched his most complex combination yet, a trapping hand to immobilize an arm, followed by a series of close-range elbow and knee strikes. It was an attack designed for an opponent who blocked. Ethan didn't block. He moved with the attack, turning his body in the same direction as Jett's force, causing the trapping hand to find nothing but air. Jett's follow-up strikes became a frantic assault on an empty space. He stumbled, off balance, the intricate attack unraveling into a clumsy display. The silence in the gym was now deafening. Every person, from the kids in the front row to the seasoned judges at the table, was captivated by the bizarre spectacle. The champion, a whirlwind of furious, impotent motion. The challenger, a calm island of absolute stillness. Jett backed away, his chest heaving. Sweat dripped from his chin onto the mat. He stared at Ethan, his eyes a mixture of fury and a new, chilling emotion, doubt. He wasn't fighting a man. He was fighting a ghost. A ghost who had seen every move, every feint, every intention, and had judged them all to be unworthy of a response. The match had no score, but everyone in the room knew who was losing. The doubt in Jett's eyes curdled into pure rage. His carefully constructed persona, the untouchable champion, the master of combat philosophy, was being dismantled in front of hundreds of people without his opponent laying a single finger on him. It was a humiliation deeper than any knockout. "Fight me," he roared, the sound echoing in the silent gym. He abandoned technique for raw aggression. Dropping his stance low, he surged forward, not with a strike, but with a powerful, driving takedown. It was a move born of desperation, a wrestler's answer to a puzzle he couldn't solve with his fists. He would put this ghost on the mat and crush him with pure, physical strength. It was the exact wrong move. As Jett drove in, aiming to grab Ethan by the hips, Ethan did the last thing anyone expected. He stepped forward. Into the attack. He didn't brace for impact. He didn't try to sprawl or push back. In one fluid, almost imperceptible motion, he turned his shoulders, dipped his weight, and placed a single, open hand on Jett's charging shoulder. It wasn't a strike. It wasn't a block. It was a guide. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. All of Jett's forward momentum, his immense power and rage, was suddenly without a target to resist it. Ethan's subtle touch redirected that force, turning Jett's linear path into a spiral. Jett's feet, expecting a collision, instead tangled beneath him. His upper body, now leading his lower body, lost all alignment. For a horrifying split second, he was airborne, a passenger in a body he no longer controlled. He hit the mat with a heavy, sickening thud. Face first. The collective gasp from the crowd was sharp and sudden. Then, absolute silence. No one moved. No one spoke. The referee stared, his hand frozen halfway to his mouth. Jett lay still for a moment, the wind knocked out of him, his mind reeling not from pain, but from sheer, unadulterated shock. Slowly, shakily, he pushed himself up onto his hands and knees. He looked at the mat, then at his hands, then across the short distance at Ethan, who stood in the exact same spot, his posture unchanged. He hadn't even broken a sweat. The champion's face was a canvas of disbelief. He had been defeated. Not by a punch, not by a kick, but by his own force. He had been vanquished by a whisper of movement. The referee finally found his voice and blew the whistle, ending the match. Jett slowly got to his feet. The fury was gone, replaced by a raw, humbling clarity. He looked at Ethan, who was now extending a hand toward him. Jett stared at the hand, then at Ethan's calm eyes, and he took it. Ethan pulled him up effortlessly. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't clap. The moment felt too profound for noise. And for the first time in his career, Julian Jett Valdez bowed to his opponent. It wasn't the perfunctory bow of sportsmanship. It was a bow of deep, earned respect. He had lost not to a better fighter, but to a better discipline. Later, long after the mats were rolled up and the crowd had thinned, the tournament coordinator found Ethan Carter sitting alone on the same bench. He held a gaudy golden trophy and a first-place medal. You didn't stay for the award ceremony," the coordinator said, his voice now soft with respect. "You won, Mr. Carter." Valdez withdrew from the final. Said he had nothing left to prove. He offered the trophy. Ethan looked at it, then back at the man, and shook his head once. "I don't need it." The coordinator hesitated, then placed the items on the bench. "Well, at least let us get your info. Do an interview. People are going to want to know who you are." "I came for a reason," Ethan said, his voice low. "It wasn't for this." There was a long pause. The coordinator finally asked the question that hung in the air all afternoon. "Why, then? Why did you fight?" Ethan didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the now empty space where the mats had been. His fingers curled slightly, as if gripping the stock of a rifle or the crisp edges of a folded flag. "I served with a kid," he began, his voice quiet but clear. "Leo Garcia. We called him Smiles, because he never stopped. Young, smart, fiercely loyal. He wanted to be a martial artist when he got home. Talked non-stop about opening his own Jeet Kune Do school in his hometown, Austin, Texas. He even had a tattered manual he'd study. He taught me footwork drills in the dust between patrols. Ethan paused, his gaze becoming distant. He didn't make it home. The coordinator's face softened. I'm sorry. Ethan gave a single, sharp nod. I promised him. If I ever got out, I'd fight in one tournament for him. Just one. Not to win, not for a trophy. Just to be there. To honor what he believed in. That real strength is quiet. That being underestimated is its own kind of power. Near the bleachers, David Chen watched the exchange. He had stayed, compelled by a sense of duty he hadn't felt since he'd taken off his uniform. What he had seen today wasn't a fight, it was a testament. The story of the silent man in the gray t-shirt didn't go viral. There were no trending hashtags. But David wrote it down and sent it to a few online forums for veterans, where it was shared quietly, respectfully, among those who understood. A few weeks later, at a small JKD dojo in Austin, Texas, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a pair of brand new sparring gloves of the highest quality. There was no note. But embroidered in neat, white thread on the cuff of one glove was the name, Leo. And on the other, Ethan. The instructor, who had been Leo's childhood friend, placed them in the center of the mat before the evening class began, a silent tribute to a promise kept. Not every warrior's story is written in headlines. Some are written in quiet acts of honor, in silent vigils, and in the profound stillness of a man who never stopped standing watch. What do you think drove Ethan more, the promise to his friend, or the code of discipline he lived by? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And please, comment with respect for the real-life service members who inspire stories like this. If this story moved you, consider sharing it, and subscribe for more content that honors quiet strength.